Sweet. Chris Hiatt, welcome, buddy. This is we talked about doing this for a while, and we finally found the time. A couple of busy folks here. How's life, man? How you doing?
Doing? Everything's going well. I'm on the market again, looking for some contract work, maybe a full time gig if the right thing comes up. I'm working on a book that I hope to have in terms of on my end of things, the final for submission by the end of the year. Hopefully, I'm anxious to get started on the second one, so we can maybe talk about that a little bit. And just taking some time for myself, the end of the year here, going to try to catch some fish before the ice comes in up on the north shores of Lake Superior, and bracing myself for the winter and the holiday insanity.
I feel that. Yeah, that's for sure. Well, first off, if you need a reference, I got you, man. I'm there. If I don't nab you up first, I enjoy working with him. I definitely vouch for you. If you need a reference on the job hunt, please feel free to hit me up. Two, I want to get into the book thing for sure because it's been a goal of mine for several years to write a book, and it's going terribly, but it's on my radar, and mine's gonna be more of a memoir kind of thing. I think that would be more entertaining, more something to leave my kids for me. And winter, I'm not a fan of, so I get that.
Is it good? Is it a choose your own adventure?
It might be. So it's kind of funny the way I'm doing it. I as I've said on these before, I'm a runner, and so I've decided to just start telling ChatGPT stories about my life, and then having it ask me questions while I'm running, which is probably hilarious because I'm huffing and puffing and I look probably ridiculous as I'm talking to myself running up and down the streets. But we'll see. It's amazing what ChatGPT must know about me at this point.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Well, the job play stuff is interesting, and it's something that you've definitely got some opinions on and some experience with, and the different philosophies on the job market today in our eDiscovery world. And maybe you could just touch on that a little bit, and what you think AI and the future of tech is doing to our space in eDiscovery and the job market. As well as just, look at me. I'm in an office. It's actually Ray's office. I got Ray's family behind me there, but I'm in an office, which not a lot of people are anymore these days.
I'm in my dining room actually right now. So
it's a nice painting. I like that.
No, I like remote work, and I think for the type of, we don't have a lot of client interfacing. I mean, there is some, but to the extent that we have client interfacing, a lot of that can be facilitated, online. And we had to be adaptable. I mean, during COVID, we had to be adaptable, remember? And everybody said, "Oh, remote working is the future." Well, it wasn't long after that the RTO orders came down. And you and I talked about it briefly on the phone before we set up a time to sit down here. And one of the things that I mentioned that I thought was really interesting is that there are a lot of big names in the tech industry. Elon Musk, of course, Zuckerberg, and heads of Google and the like. It's really interesting that AI is the future. AI is going to change the way that business is done, and this and that and the other thing. But at the same time, you're moving in that direction, that very forward, futuristic notion. And at the same time, too, that you do that, you recognize that there are you're not going to have a lot of control over AI, right? I mean, you give up a certain amount of control in that regard. Well, at the same time that they're having conversation about AI, they're also saying, we want you in the office. And so those two schools of thought are very, very much on opposite ends of the spectrum. And as a layperson and an analyst, I look at that and I think to myself, well, if you can't even envision where people might work, I'm not so inclined to think that you'll be able to envision how people work and what work looks like in the future, right? Because you just you can't have it both ways. It's one or the other.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, like, well, AI, in my opinion, I've noticed too, is pretty iterative, right? Like, I I use it every day, but a lot of times it takes me 3 or 4 cracks at it to get it exactly how I want it. And there's a lot of human involvement in that. And having sat in your seat at a law firm, I noticed a lot of attorneys really like to come down to my office because I was way down on one of the lower floors, and they want to hover over you while you're getting your the production out the door for them because it's last minute and they're trying to get it. And so I have a sense now that maybe they would like you in the office so that they can sit with you while you do your AI to help them solve their problems.
Yeah, I mean, there is some of that, but it's an interesting thing because it is the new buzzword, much like project managers, and we can talk about project managers too. I mean, it seems like in every industry now, it's project managers, and I'm kind of, it's a title, really. I think there are some cases that would benefit from not so much a project manager, but just a different philosophy, a different idea. I mean, because you do run the risk in those scenarios of too many cooks in the kitchen. And as someone who came from a restaurant background early on in my career in the back of the house, I understand what it's like to have too many cooks in the kitchen, crossing wires, ill communication, and it's just not productive, a productive way to work. And so it is advantageous. But of course, the perfect question, that always comes to mind for me is, how did we achieve our clients' goals in the past? Project managers, and the way that we did that is everybody understood what was expected of them. They knew their role, they knew their capability, there was communication, and it sort of came about organically. It wasn't this sort of all-seeing eye, top-down methodology to things, but it looks good. It looks good on the billing statements. You got a project manager in here or whatever. And I've seen in many instances where a lot of eDiscovery cost, project management included, a lot of that is written off because they don't fully visualize that thing. But back to your point about the AI and being in the office, one of the questions that I've posed at Relativity Fest for probably the past 3, 4, 5 years maybe is and I would ask this on all the panels that they had in the sessions, and I would say, what percentage would you say of your cases that you're working are currently leveraging the technology that we have right now? And at that time, it was a lot of active learning, TAR, technology, the review and the like, really before AI. And overwhelmingly, the response was 25 to 30%. And I don't, so yeah, AI is a new buzzword and this and that and the other thing, but people just think they're going to press a button and everything is just going to just do itself. And as you just mentioned, that's not the case. You need the mind behind it to drive where you want to go with it, at least now in its infancy.
Yeah, you're 100% right, and it takes several years to get there, right? And those of us that are early adopters are trying it and learning and testing. And it's hard to try and learn and test when it's the end client's dime, and they're paying for it, and it's not cheap depending on the size of these collections. And I do think at the end of the day, a lot of our clients really just want an affordable way to quickly get through their documents and not blow the budget, wasting time and messing around with a lot of technology that may or may not work properly. And so, and they want to review the documents efficiently and make sure that it's done correctly and on time and with a reasonable budget. And I think you're right. We pitch AI review all pretty much daily. And the number of clients that take us up on it are pretty thin. And I think it'll increase. It'll definitely increase, and more people will be willing to try it. And maybe as the costs continue to come down and it becomes a little bit easier to take a shot at it and see what you get that first time or two, then people will use it more so. And I pitch it often as a QC function too, like as a backstop. I think a lot of the technology is really, is really good for making sure that nothing was missed or there's not a random responsive document in a batch full of privilege. And so, using technology in multiple ways is always a good idea, especially when it's affordable.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there, and that's actually one of the best ways to sell it because we're still very much archaic in terms of workflows, right? The first iteration of search terms, right? And then okay, you got 500,000 documents that hit on terms. Oh no, we can't look at all those. Let me get back at you, right? And then you go through this several times. In each iteration, the documents are literally just falling on the floor, and
Yeah.
there's a presumption there that the documents that are falling on the floor between iterations is not pertinent or germane. I mean, that could literally be your smoking gun right there. And so the way you sell it is after they get to their fourth or their fifth iteration of terms, and they like the number of documents they're getting, not the quality of the documents, the number of documents that they're getting.
Right.
And then you go back to them and you say, hey, after they finish their review, whatever, and you run that through some algorithm, whatever, and then you find that you have X number of documents that are likely responsive based on what they ended up looking at. And then the ears kind of perk up and it's, wait, what do you mean? Talk to me. How did you figure that out? Oh, whatever. And then you kind of sell it. And so maybe the next time they think about that.
I love that's one of my ways to go. Sorry to interrupt there, but if you're a litigator, an attorney out there, pay attention now, because this is I always say I'll work backwards from the budget. We understand what your budget is. We'll figure out exactly how many hours you need and how many we can take from there to make sure that you meet your deadlines and stay in budget. So when they hear that number, right, they get excited.
Well, and I think, you think to yourself, theoretically, that technology will advance in terms of the legal field, right? Because you have millennials, Gen Z, attorneys, young associates, and they're pretty hip to the game, and they're Snapchat and this and that and the other thing. But what happens is they're working on a case and they're eager to please the partners that they're working under. And the number of partners that are really on top of technology and provide good guidance and all of that is slim to none. I mean, they just kind of don't. They still they get the New York Times in hard copy on the front doorstep. I mean, that's kind of the way they roll. And so there's a lot of that that sort of generational. Everyone becomes a Luddite, right? That apprehension there because they don't understand it and they can't control it, and it's difficult for them to articulate to their client, and they don't want to show to their client that I have to lean on this other person's expertise, right? That doesn't look good if you're a lawyer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but the ones that kind of concede, hey, I'm an attorney, I practice law. That's my bread and butter. I practice law. You're the tech guy, whatever. Here's my problem. Here's our budget. What can we do here? And the ones that kind of have that conversation, that dialogue, those are the ones that are going to do well, I think.
And those are my favorite folks to work with. And that kind of goes back to your project management point earlier. I think a lot of attorneys just want one consistent, concise point of contact for all of the things that we do, so that they don't have to check with 7 people. And I was a project manager for a number of years, and a lot of my job was keeping all the ducks in a row and translating. And and that's what I was good at. And so I think that's still true. And and along those lines, the job market, which you're sounds like you're going to be entering into here, or just have entered into, is an interesting one. I actually know of a couple. We'll have to talk offline. I know of a couple open support manager jobs out there right now. But it's changed a lot, over the years. Give me your your thoughts and kind of how do you feel the job market is in the eDiscovery lit sport world these days?
Well, I think there are a lot of jobs that I would say. In fact, I think there have been some conversations about some changes to LinkedIn and the like, because I think there are a lot of job postings out there that are not legitimate. They give the perception that a company is is growing. Maybe it's designed to infer upon people that work for the company that help is on the way, kind of a thing. But I don't think that there's as much open job market out there right now as people might tend to believe. I know that I've seen a lot of postings for the DOJ, the United States Post Office, and some other government agencies. And I did have a recruiter reach out to me, and in fact, two different recruiters about the same position or positions, and they reached out to me, and they saw my skill set and my, um, how many years I've been in the game. And they were talking to me, and I said, what exactly is driving this big push for analysts and project managers, e-discovery project managers in the public sector? And they both said Doge. A lot of it was just Doge and just digging into stuff and finding where fraud was and this and that and the other thing. And it makes sense, but I've never had an interest of working in the public sector. I think it's extremely volatile. And of course, I just saw that just a couple of hours ago, we're now in a shutdown. So to my point, it is volatile. But I do think working on some I'm on the other side of some DOJ cases, or have been on the other side of some DOJ cases. And so to be sort of on the inside, as they say, could be, kind of intriguing, a little interesting.
Sure. Yeah, that does sound interesting. All I know is those productions can be a lot, and I'll just leave that there. You seem to have really, you're working on a book. You love writing. I can tell by looking at your LinkedIn profile. You lead the league in articles, which is amazing. Give me a couple of highlights from some of the articles that you've written. What are your favorite ones, or what's a topic from an article that you've written that you were really passionate about, or you love talking about?
Well, one that comes up quite a bit is the transmittal email, right? So your client is sending you data, and they send it over via email, and then you've got the paralegal that wants the email, the data loaded in, and this and that and the other thing, and they forward the email. Well, it's somewhat innocuous, but it does technically, it is attorney-client communication, right? And so that gets tagged, and then the whole concept of families, right? You've got a couple of attachments that are privileged, but then you've got some attachments that are not privileged, and how you're going to handle the whole family. And I printed off some documents that are around here somewhere, but I'm going to literally try to do like a big whiteboard demonstration of what that looks like, because there's a lot of associates that we work with that will say, oh, I'm done with my document review, we're ready to run a production. And then you go in there and you start realizing there's a lot of discrepancies within the context of the families, whether it's privileged considerations or responsive considerations and the like. So when things would come up like that, I would write an article about that. There's that one. There's another one about Where's Waldo. It's basically Where's Waldo, and it's as someone who works exclusively remote, and I've worked exclusively remote since COVID, since like 2020, whenever that was, January 2020. Making sure that the teams, even though they can't see you on the regular, they know that you're available. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean not having any boundaries. It does, establish those boundaries, but to let them know, if I know that a legal team is doing document review well into the evening, I may be listening or watching a Dodgers game, and the Dodgers game, for me here in the Midwest, the Dodgers game starts at 9:30. It's 7:30 on the West Coast. So I might be watching a baseball game late into the night. And so my status shows that I'm available. If you're doing document review, you got a question. And for most of my career, I have said to attorneys, if you need something, feel free to send me a text message. I don't abuse it, but feel free to send me a text message and just say, hey, when you get a second, I've got a question. I'm kind of in a pickle here. And I think part of the reason why I do that is because early on in my career, I was tasked with having to facilitate a specific a task. Somebody asked me to do something, and you're not sure, you're kind of spinning your wheels. You're not really sure how to go or where to go. And I know that there are a lot of associates and paralegals that experience that. They don't have that technical aptitude. So making yourself available to help them out.
I love, and I say that all the time, and I tend to generally be available too if I coach my kids' sports a lot. If I'm on the field and I'm pretty locked in on that, and I'm not checking my phone. But other than that, I don't mind it. I do always encourage case teams to just give us all a heads up. Not everybody is going to be as available as you and I are. But the project management team here, I'm like, just let them know. Give them a heads up of a day or two that you may be working late, or you got a long weekend ahead of you, or whatever it is. And that way we can know to look out for it and plan accordingly. You mentioned text messages, and you made me think of a couple of things actually there, but I would almost prefer text messaging with clients. And it's interesting because I've shied away from it for the most part, because that feels like that's in the personal world and we're in the business world. I would personally love it if clients would text me instead of, constantly phone calls and emails and things like that. I'll take whatever, but listen, my phone number is 317-289-5577. If you've made it this far into the podcast, text me and let me know, first of all. Second of all, do you think clients are opening up, and attorneys that you deal with are opening up to texting a little bit more about things?
Well, I know mine and mine know me.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I say. And the thing is, on the one hand, someone will say, well, I don't want some attorney like sending me a text message when I'm on my personal time. And I think to myself, I want them to message
Definitely
me.
do. Yeah.
Because it makes it personal. It's, even though you can't see me all the time, I'm not a robot. There's a human here. There's a human element to this. And so if you need something, I'm here to assist you as best as I can. But simply just sending an email to my work email and then just going about doing whatever, that's impersonal in the off hours. And I don't have work email on my phone for that reason. And again, which is not to say I'm not available to assist you. I am available to assist you, but you'll have to reach out to me personally.
Yeah. I that makes a lot of sense. And I always say, like, I'd rather be able to assess the level of urgency that there is. And often I work late often. That doesn't mean I need a response late. I just happen to be working late, and I may send a note or an email. But the text message stuff, I can quickly respond and say, hey, is this something you need this second, or is tomorrow morning fine? And it takes 3 seconds and you're done and moved on.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, once in a blue moon, I'll field a call. I did get a call from a partner one time on a Friday, and it was about 7:30 on a Friday. It was probably a couple in already. I was coherent, but anyway, he called me and he was working on something. I had the client on his other line and called me and was taken aback by the fact that I picked up. And I just said, well, I'm here. I'm just winding down. So yeah,
that's great. I liked what you said about the whiteboard project. I think about that stuff all the time, and I've tried a couple of those over the years, and I end up not posting it because I'm a little ashamed of my sketching skills or spelling or whatever it is on the spot on the dry erase board. But I love that idea. And I kick around this a lot. Like, sometimes I feel like guys like us, I almost want to talk to just the people who've never worn a lanyard at a trade show. And what I mean by that is that, like, the folks that are going to all the trade shows really have a high level of knowledge, and you can collaborate more and that sort of thing. But there's a lot of folks out there that don't care to go to those. They don't take the time to do a bunch of homework on eDiscovery and best practices. And I think it's funny because there's so many people that are really knowledgeable about AI. And then once every couple of weeks, I get a call and there's an attorney on the other end that is deleting documents out of a PST that they've downloaded of their clients, and they're just removing documents that way and wondering if I can PDF it. And right, this
Yeah.
is a true story. And so like that's, and so I would like, but I feel like sometimes there's this, I want to just go with the basics. And I personally don't care, really what the perception of the knowledge base that I'm putting out there is like, I just still feel like there's so many attorneys out there that are still in the first couple of steps of what is even eDiscovery and what are the best practices. And so it's interesting. What are your thoughts on kind of the 101 level stuff and reaching people that need, still need that type of help?
Well, yeah, I like that. I like the one-on-one. One of the things that I really like about the type of work that I do is the one-on-one, like training, helping paralegals. And because how many times have you been on the receiving end? You find out somebody producing documents outside of a workspace, right? Maybe it was just 3 or 5 documents, whatever it was. It came in from the client, it was PDFs, and that's fine. Yeah, and I get that happens sometimes. You don't have time to process it in, get it tagged up, export it out, all of that. But there is a workflow for that. It's not just getting 5 PDFs from the client, slapping some Bates numbers on it, and sending it out. And then you go back to the paralegal and you say, do you have an original set of this that doesn't have the Bates numbers on it or whatever, like as you received it? What? And so you want to avoid those things so that retroactively you can go back, you can run a mock production, recreate the thing, but they have to know that, and so I like the one-on-one, getting out in front of people. I actually have a conference I'm giving to the National Federation of Paralegal Associations coming up in a couple of weeks. It's an online thing, and I think they have about 150 attendees or what have you. And one of the presentation I'm doing is quantifying the EDRM. So breaking it down into tasks, right? Your day-to-day function. What does it look like? And of course, most of these people, I'm sure, are gainfully employed, and they have a way that they do things, but they don't always know how that role integrates with an analyst and a project manager. And I did have a stint as a paralegal in litigation before I was an analyst. And so when it comes to data management and how you make those requests for, these are some subpoena documents that we got on a third-party request. I mean, that is vastly different than just raw data you get from your client, right? And so how to communicate what you've received, who you got it from, when you got it from, and those sorts of things. So that's one of the things that we'll be talking about but again, that's a one-on-one. I might have a larger audience, maybe 30, how many of our people are there, but having those conversations about the work that you do can improve upon the work that we do, and back and forth. Because if you get documents from a paralegal and they say, hey Jim, here's some client documents from September 5th 2025, they're just some client documents, right? Well, what distinguishes the client documents from September 5th of 2025 from the client documents that you just got today, right? And so 6 months, 8 months down the road, when an attorney says, hey, did we ever get those profit and loss statements from the Acme Corp for whatever, blah, 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 you're not going to know. Right. I mean, unless the file name, you get lucky and the file name says profit loss 2022, something like that. But knowing that there are specific questions you need to have, the way you communicate, instead of just saying, hey, here's some documents, can you load it to the database? Well, which data? I'm working on like 7 different matters, which one? And sometimes one client with multiple matters. So it's not even enough to just say, hey, these are for the Acme Corp. Well, Acme Corp
we've got 7 cases.
Right. Wile E. Coyote or Roadrunner? Like which one? Yeah.
That's cool that you're doing that. I love. Well, I imagine you'll put. Well, and we'll make sure we get your LinkedIn out there and that sort of thing. But you'll put the the information on the conference and the presentation you're doing out on your LinkedIn, so people can check it out there and follow along, I would imagine, right? You recording
Yeah.
it? You making a video? I'm a big video guy these days.
I think I think they probably will record it. Whether or not they make it available for non-attendees after the fact remains to be seen. I think the content, you know, they tend to want to have it, but
People
you know,
sign in, yeah.
you know, I'm pretty open. I'm also working on a cooperative called Good Tree
Okay.
Discovery Cooperative, and the
Yeah.
whole concept behind Good Tree is paying it forward for one, but the notion that a good tree produces good fruit, right? So if I know how to do something and there's somebody else that is interested in this line of work, maybe they've only been doing it for a few years or what have you, and they want to know something, connect with me on LinkedIn, you know, and we can set up a one-on-one. I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not looking to get financially wealthy with my knowledge. I mean, of course, if somebody wanted to, you know, make a contribution,
Sure.
I wouldn't turn it down. But you know, it's kind of, I think where I'm at in my career is that it kind of, the analogy is like in Star Wars: A New Hope, right? So Obi-Wan hands Luke the lightsaber, and he says, you know, this was your father's, whatever, and he's, be careful you don't lop off your arm, kind of a thing, right? And then by the time Return of the Jedi comes around, he lost the other lightsaber, had to build a new one from scratch, and then it glows. You know, it's not blue, it's green, because he has all of this, the power of the Force behind him. And that's kind of how I feel, is that I've done this for a couple of decades. I feel like I'm pretty good at it. I'm still pretty sharp in terms of, you know, analytical ability and the way that I look at problem solving. And I would like to share what I know with other people, while at the same time understanding that there are a lot of unknowns that I have yet to explore. But the other part of it too is how do you gain accessibility to that? I would love to learn some of these AI generated platforms, but if you don't have clients that are going to incur the cost, you don't have attorneys that can impress upon their client the benefits of it. If you just can't get buy-in, then it's just sitting there. It needs people to be able to explore it, to get acclimated and proficient with it. That's what I'm looking for. So to the extent that I'm on the market, that's what I'm looking for, is those opportunities, because it's not like you can just log into some system and hey, let me spend 6 months learning how relativity works for free. You know, I mean, maybe there's somebody that's doing that, but my inclination is that it probably is not. And so we're right here. And as a Gen Xer, somebody that made that transition from the analog world to the digital world, I feel like I'm pretty well suited for transition from digital world now to AI and that whole thing. It's like Blade Runner, you know?
Oh yeah, I think you're the Han Solo of eDiscovery. That's kind of what I'm hearing here. I think that's
Guido shot first, by the way.
What's that?
Guido shot first, by the way, in the cantina.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Well, I mean, this is super interesting, and you know, lots of cool. I think we're in the same, cut from the same cloth. Like, you know, I'm out here trying to just kind of help folks and, you know, give advice where I can. I've been around for a couple of decades myself. And, you know, at this point, you know, it's not about, you know, the money or the accolades or anything along those lines. It's, you know, it's just good conversations with good people. And, you know, I like to work with people that I like to work with. And if people end up being a pain in the neck, then I could, you know, I don't need it that bad. And so, it's refreshing to hear, you know, that you're in that same boat.
I've said that to recruiters. I've said, you know, I want to be well compensated for the work that I do, of course, but that's not my primary motivation. My primary motivation is opportunity and exposure to learn and not be stagnant, because really, you know, only the strong survive. So you have to be adaptable. You have to be, and who knows? When I say I'm on the market, I would love to stay in my field of expertise. You know, God may have a different plan for me.
Mhm.
I may do something completely different. But I'm motivated.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I want to, you know, my dad told me when I was younger, and he was in the restaurant business, and he said, you know, productivity is the engine of prosperity. You know, you've got to be productive in some way, shape, or form. If you homestead, you still have to be productive. You got to, you know, milk the cows, you got to gather up the eggs from the chickens and all of that sort of thing. You're working for yourself, but you have to be productive in some way, shape, or form. And even people that have been fortunate to have their family fortune bestowed upon them, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to squander it pretty quick,
Oh
right?
boy, no. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, well, and the plan for you may to become a big time author with this book you're working on. Tell me a little bit about the book and what's it all about, and what inspired you to go down this path and write a book in the first place.
so I come from an arts background. I did a lot of painting, poetry. I wrote a lot of poetry, um, and I have some poems that are in some various different periodicals. I think they're even
Oh,
housed in the Library of Congress. So I guess you could say I am published. And so I would always kind of embark upon. When I would go out and about. Sometimes, you know, you would just I do a lot of. I'm an introvert, right? I'm an analyst, and most analysts are kind of introverted, right? So when I would go to the party, I'd be the guy that'd be hanging out on the outskirts, you know, just kind of bumping his head to the music and checking it all out. And so you pick up on people's mannerisms, and you kind of just develop in your mind who they are as an individual, kind of thing. And so I would kind of write these little character descriptions and stuff like that. But I think the thing that I struggled with the most is I wanted to develop a character that was relatable, but that could also, I could continue to compound it, right? So like Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, right? It's not just like a one
yeah.
and done sort of thing. It's okay, it's the adventures of Nancy Drew. This time she's over here. This time she's over here. And it's the same general sort of synopsis, but there's change there. And I couldn't seem to come up with a character that really resonated with me. It took a long time. And then the light bulb went off. You know, when I had a lot more free time during COVID. And I was like, you know, I'm going to create a character that's a digital nomad, like a legal data analyst who has a camper van and he travels around because as someone that worked in an office all the time, trying to achieve that work-life balance, right? I love the outdoors. I got reconnected with the outdoors during COVID, so I was fishing and hiking, and just that solitude, being away from the devices, no Wi-Fi, that serenity. So I created a character, but he works out of his van, so he's got Starlink up on the top, and he works on stuff, but it's kind of more on his own terms. And so in this first book, the first book is called Native Redactions, and it
Uh-huh.
incorporates a case that he's working on along with a side story about CO2 pipeline project that is cutting through some native land in South Dakota. So it starts out, he's on the North Shore up in Duluth on a trout fishing thing, and all of a sudden they start tugging on the strings a little bit, and he can establish the boundary, right? Like he can set the boundary for himself and just say, no, I'm on my own time, I'm on PTO, whatever. But there's that pull, that curiosity, right? And he's able to facilitate the work, the need, that people have for his skill set, but he can also incorporate some of that solitude and stuff. So that's the story. I'm really hoping to finish this one up this year because I'm already chewing on ideas for the next adventure, like what part of the country. And he's a prolific connoisseur of music. He's road tripping it. So
Very cool.
certain and the song selections that are mentioned in the story kind of help to shape the theme and the kind of the mood and the tone of it. So as I'm thinking about the next story, I'm like, well, do I want to go kind of beach vibe with it and have like some reggae tunes kind of a thing, or do I want to go in the Pacific Northwest, and maybe it's a little bit more dreary and melancholic.
Yeah.
So
You're a big music guy, right? So, what are the top couple of artists that are in the soundtrack, do you think?
well, it's mood based, so it really depends on my mood. If it's late in the evening, then I'm full on jazz. And I like a lot of the ballads. So Coltrane, of course, Miles Davis, but I like the ballad stuff, the real slow stuff. So like um, Lester Young, Coleman Hawkins, Ben Webster. There's an album. If you're entertaining, if you have people over for dinner and you're really just trying to keep it on the chill, there's a Bill Evans and Chet Baker, the legendary sessions, and I snagged it on 180 gram vinyl, and it's all instrumental, and it's dinner. I mean, the candles on the table almost light themselves. I mean, it's that apropos. So I'll listen to that, but sometimes I'm feeling kind of edgy. Like if I'm working on stuff that is just, you don't have to think too much about it. Like if I'm imaging documents for production, it might be Tool.
Yeah,
It might be just banging. This morning it was Steely Dan, so I was listening to Steely Dan quite a bit. But I gravitate more towards that than television. I mean, for me to sit down and just engage in a television show or a series or a movie, I get a little restless. I mean, you can leverage your time if you're listening to music. You can fold some laundry, prep dinner, that kind of thing. So
I got during COVID, one of my big things that I had to kind of pry myself away from was watching live concerts on YouTube. And I would go find an old Pearl Jam concert, or I like the alternative grunge stuff. Although I became a big Childish Gambino fan. I don't know if you know who he is. His real name is Donald Glover, and so I was watching a ton of concerts, which was cool. My daughters got into him, and so we were able to bond over a music act and go see him in concert, and that was a lot of fun. So I can relate to the music, and I got into as many live shows as I could watch on YouTube for quite a while.
what would you say, in unfortunately COVID and the George Floyd thing kind of put the kibosh on the enjoyment that I got out of that. Although I did just about a month ago, 2 months ago, I went with a buddy of mine. We went and saw Dinosaur Jr. In Minneapolis, and that was like the second time I've seen Dinosaur Jr. And Jay Mask is totally underrated guitarist. I mean, just great tones and just can rip on the guitar. And it's a three-piece band, so when you hear that music coming from just three people on the stage is pretty wild, and they play loud. What show would you say, if you were to look back on it, what would be one that would be like top tier for you?
Well, taking my middle daughter to see Gambino was fun. I'm old enough, as you are, to have seen Nirvana. And so that I was a young, dumb college kid. So that's pretty amazing. You mentioned Three Piece. I thought of the Black Keys. I really liked seeing them. I'm a Gary Clark Jr. fan. Talk about great guitarists. Like I do enjoy that. And for me, I hit all of the festival kind of things, but back in the 90s it was very different than it is now. So, here in Indy we had an X Fest, and Lollapalooza used to bounce around. And
I'm so glad that you said Lollapalooza, because out of all the shows that I've seen, I still think the number one show is when Smashing Pumpkins headlined Lollapalooza in '94 at Harriet Island in St. Paul, because Siamese Dream had just come out. That was their sophomore album, and I think Tribe Called Quest was on the bill too, and it was such a great show.
Here in Indy, during the pumpkin set, for whatever reason in the lawn, everybody started throwing, it was trash really, but like cups and boxes from food and whatever they could find, throwing it in the air. And it was kind of chaos. It wasn't the cleanest thing in the world, but it was a blast for, a young guy in '94.
And then they followed up with in Minneapolis with the free concert that they did downtown.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah,
That
that's a
was,
great band.
right,
It is a
that was
great band,
pretty.
I guess. They're still out there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, you know, my gal pal of mine, we talk about it all the time. She says, you know, the '90s was just such a great generation for music. It really was.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah, we were lucky. Um, Chris, this has been amazing. Well, anything else you want to cover while I got you? What else you want to go over?
No, I just think if you got anybody that's listening and they want it, they're looking for an analyst, they're looking for, I don't mind doing the grunt work. I don't mind loading data, running client interviews, custodial interviews, data mapping, run some productions, or you just want some feedback. I mean, maybe just there's something that you don't know how to do, you don't understand. I will tell you where there is a niche to be filled, and I probably shouldn't provide this information for free because somebody's probably going to snatch onto it and make money, but that's fine. Where there is a niche is, you know, most onboarding for associates, it doesn't even touch on the EDRM, the skill set that they need to have. And going back to kind of what I said before is you know, you'll get a message from an associate, you know, they're doing a document review, right? And they'll say, hey, you know, I'm done with my document review. I finished all those batches. We're ready to go, you know, run this production. You go in there and you start to run your QC and you see, well, you have family discrepancies. And when you say that to them, they don't understand what that means. They don't know what family discrepancies are. So kind of incorporating that sort of training and some of what that means, you know, the impact, you know, what the difference between global dedupe, custodial dedupe, no dedupe, you know, just those kinds of things, that sort of basic training, because I don't think that there are programs in law schools that really teach that.
Not really, no, not enough. And I think you just created your own business there. Well, you set up a community online. We'll make some videos where you train new associates on EDRM and the best practices and how to execute things, and charge them $500 to log in and get access to the videos and an hour-long phone call with you. There you go.
Could happen.
That's a
Good treat.
That's a business. There we go. I like it. This is Chris. This has been great. So Chris Hiatt, Hiatt. Make sure, look up Chris on LinkedIn. That's probably the best way to get a hold of you, right? Especially if you're hiring.
Well, I just changed my profile pic. It's a black and white picture of me with sunglasses on, but the one before that had this picture in the background, this painting.
Oh, there we go. I like the sunglasses. I've got one of my daughter and I, and I'm sipping on a smoothie in mine. So I like the relaxed picture better.
Yeah, somebody told me I look like Anthony Bourdain, and I was like,
a little bit.
You know, yeah.
That's cool. We'll have to talk offline. I've got a restaurant related app. You're from the restaurant industry, so we got a lot more in common.
Oh, for sure.
That's cool. Well, hey man, I really appreciate it. Thank you for doing this. I hope you get a bunch of folks banging your door down, and if not, you know, maybe we came up with a new business idea for you, and you'll go remember me when you're a multimillionaire from teaching people how to onboard eDiscovery.
Yeah, I will do that. I for sure will do that. Paying it forward.
That's right.